The crystalline spires of Zephyr Prime pierced the violet sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that had watched over the Zephyrian Empire for 8,000 years. Within the Grand Council chamber, silence held the air like a physical weight. The vast amphitheater, carved from a single massive geode, could seat 10,000 beings. But today only the most powerful voices in the galaxy gathered in its gleaming depths. High Counselor Vexthera stood at the central podium, her ancient form draped in robes that seemed to absorb light itself. Her 6 eyes, milky with age, swept across the assembled leaders with the patience of stone. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. The humans grow bold. She began, each word deliberate. Their ships now venture beyond the Terran exclusion zone. They establish outposts on worlds we have marked as restricted. They ignore our warnings. A ripple of disdain passed through the younger council members. Admiral Kethmore, his blue-scaled hide gleaming with military decorations, rose from his seat with barely contained contempt. His species had conquered 17 star systems in the past century alone. Their warships veer across 3 galactic arms. With respect, High Counselor, you speak of humans as if they pose a threat. His voice boomed across the chamber, designed to project authority. They are children playing with fire sticks while we command the power of stars themselves. One demonstration of our capabilities would send them scurrying back to their little blue world. The other young leaders nodded in agreement. Commander Zilneth of the Void Hunters leaned forward, her forearms gesturing dismissively. My scouts report their largest vessels barely span 2 kilometers. Our dreadnoughts eclipse their entire fleets. Their weapons are chemical explosives and primitive energy beams. We wield quantum disruptors and reality shapers. High Counselor Vexthera closed her eyes, and for a moment, the chamber felt the chill of winter winds from worlds long dead. When she opened them again, they held depths that spoke of horrors witnessed and wisdom earned through pain. I am old, she said softly, yet her words carried to every corner of the vast space. Old enough to remember the Korthak Dominion. They thought as you do now. Their ships burned across 1,000 worlds. Their weapons turned planets to ash. They were unstoppable. They were magnificent. They were gods among insects. She paused, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. The humans destroyed them utterly. Admiral Kethmore's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Legends, Counselor, stories told to frighten younglings. The Korthak fell to internal strife, to civil war. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows lies, Vexthera replied. I was there, Admiral. I witnessed the first human vessels emerge in their system, crude things of metal and fire. I watched the Korthak fleets that had never known defeat, retreat in terror. I saw the aftermath. The younger council members exchanged glances, some rolling their eyes, others whispering among themselves. This was old superstition, the paranoid fears of an ancient mind that had outlived its usefulness. High Admiral Kethmore stood to his full imposing height, his ceremonial armor reflecting the chamber's crystalline walls. If these humans are so dangerous, why do they remain confined to one small corner of the galaxy? Why haven't they expanded beyond a handful of worlds in 8,000 years? Vexthera's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every being in the chamber heard her words with crystal clarity. Because they're sleeping. The silence that followed was different now, heavier. Even some of the younger members felt something cold touch their hearts. The humans are not like us, the High Counselor continued. They do not seek empire for its own sake. They do not conquer because they can. They spread slowly, carefully, building rather than taking. But when threatened, when pushed, when someone makes the mistake of believing their restraint is weakness. She trailed off, her ancient eyes focusing on something beyond the chamber walls. Admiral Kethmore's patience finally snapped. Enough of these ghost stories. The Third Fleet is currently conducting exercises near the Centauri system. Give me permission, and I'll demonstrate exactly how threatening these humans are. One show of force, one display of our true power, and they'll understand their place in the galaxy. The other military leaders voiced their agreement. Commander Zilneth pounded her fists on her seat. The Admiral speaks wisdom. Let us end this debate with action. Show the humans their place, and we can return to important matters. High Counselor Vexthera looked around the chamber, seeing the eager faces of youth hungry for glory, blind to the lessons of history. She saw Admiral Kethmore's confident stance, his absolute certainty in Zephyrian superiority. She saw the dismissive gestures of commanders who had never faced true desperation. Finally, she bowed her head in defeat. Very well, Admiral Kethmore, you have permission to conduct your demonstration. But remember my words when the stars begin to burn. Admiral Kethmore smiled, showing rows of predatory teeth. The only thing that will burn, Counselor, is human pride. As the council session ended and the members filed out discussing the coming show of force, High Counselor Vexthera remained in her seat, staring up at the crystal dome above. Through its faceted surface, she could see the stars wheeling in their ancient dance, and she wondered which ones would still be shining when this was over. In the depths of space, sensor stations detected the movement of the Zephyrian Third Fleet as it changed course toward the Sol system. On a dozen worlds, automated systems began recording energy signatures and fleet compositions. And on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, coffee grew cold on desks as people stared at their screens and reached for red phones. The sleeping giant was stirring. The bridge of the ZDS Stormbreaker hummed with quiet efficiency as Admiral Kethmore reviewed the tactical displays floating before his command chair. The massive dreadnought, 3 kilometers of gleaming metal and impossible technology, led a fleet of 50 warships toward the edge of human space. Each vessel represented centuries of advancement, armed with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been breached. Admiral, we're receiving multiple communications from the human vessels, reported Communications Officer Veltar, her voice carrying a note of amusement. They're demanding we identify ourselves and state our intentions. Kethmore's laugh rumbled through the bridge. How delightfully primitive. Open a channel. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of what the humans called a heavy cruiser. The Admiral studied the vessel's commander, a middle-aged human female with steel-gray hair and eyes that held no fear, only calculation. This intrigued him slightly. I am Admiral Kethmore of the Zephyrian Third Fleet, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of 8 millennia of dominance. You are Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, I presume? Chen's expression remained neutral. That's correct. Admiral, you're entering restricted space with a hostile fleet formation. I'm ordering you to withdraw immediately. The Zephyrian Bridge crew exchanged amused glances. Kethmore leaned forward, genuinely curious about this human's audacity. Admiral Chun, surely you can see the disparity in our forces. My flagship alone masses more than your entire fleet. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot outrun ours. Yet you demand we withdraw. I do. Chen's voice never wavered. This is your final warning. Kethmore studied her face, searching for some sign of the fear he expected to see. Instead, he found something that puzzled him. Pity. This human was looking at him with pity. Fascinating, he murmured, then raised his voice. Very well, Admiral Chun. Allow me to demonstrate why your bravado is misplaced. He gestured to his weapons officer. Target their lead destroyer. Minimum power setting. We want to disable, not obliterate. Target acquired, Admiral. Fire. A lance of coherent energy, beautiful and terrible, reached across space in an instant. It struck the human destroyer's shields, which flared briefly before collapsing. The beam continued, punching through the vessel's hull like paper, carving a precise hole through non-critical sections. Atmosphere vented from a wound, quickly sealed by emergency protocols. Kethmore smiled. As you can see, Admiral, your technology is insufficient. That was our lightest touch. Withdraw now, and we'll consider this lesson complete. Admiral Chen's image flickered slightly, not from interference, but from what appeared to be a brief moment of emotion crossing her features. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Admiral Kethmore, you just committed an act of war against a human species. I am required by fleet regulations to ask you one final time. Will you withdraw from human space? Something in her tone made Kethmore pause. There was no anger, no fear, no desperation. There was only a terrible certainty, as if she were reading from a script she'd hoped never to use. "We will not withdraw," he replied, his own certainty absolute. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "Then God help you, because we won't." The transmission ended. On the human destroyer, damage control teams were already sealing the breach. But something else was happening. Emergency transmissions were racing outward from every human vessel, tight beam communications aimed at relay stations deeper in their territory. Within minutes, those signals would reach Earth, Mars, and every human colony. Keth Moore dismissed this activity as irrelevant panic. Tactical, prepare for a full demonstration. I want clean disabling shots on half their fleet. Show them the futility of resistance. But before the order could be executed, something changed. The human ships would have been maintaining a defensive posture, suddenly broke formation. They didn't retreat, they advanced, accelerating directly toward the Zephyrian fleet with engines burning at maximum power. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his voice, "the humans are charging us." Keth Moore blinked in surprise. This was not how defeated enemies behaved. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Continue with disabling shots only. What followed was unlike anything in Keth Moore's centuries of military experience. The human ships moved with desperate precision, using every scrap of cover, asteroids, debris, even their own disabled vessels. Their tactics were crude by Zephyrian standards, but executed with a ferocity that was disturbing. More concerning was their apparent disregard for their own safety. Human ships rammed through Zephyrian formations, accepting crippling damage to deliver point-blank attacks. Their weapons, primitive though they were, began finding weak points in Zephyrian shields through sheer volume and concentration of fire. Status report. Keth Moore demanded as the Stormbreaker shuddered under multiple impacts. Shields holding at 87%, Tactical reported. "But, Admiral, the humans aren't trying to destroy us. They're painting us. Painting us. Target designation lasers, sensor probes, some kind of marking system. Every ship they've engaged has been tagged with low-power emissions." Keth Moore frowned. What possible purpose could that serve? The human fleet was already crippled, 7 vessels destroyed, and twice that number disabled. This should be over. Then his communications officer looked up with an expression of dawning horror. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive gravitic distortions at multiple jump points throughout the system. Something's coming through, something big." The tactical display updated, and Admiral Keth Moore felt his heart skip in unison. Emerging from hyperspace jumps at 17 different points were human fleets. Not the small system defense forces he'd expected, but massive battle groups with ships he'd never seen before. Vessels that dwarfed even his dreadnought were materializing from the void, their hulls bearing scars that spoke of battles fought in distant systems. "Impossible," he whispered. Intelligence reports indicated minimal human fleet strength. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos on an open channel, broadcast to every ship in the system. "Admiral Keth Moore, let me properly introduce you to the human species. What you've been fighting is Patrol Group 7. Traffic cops, essentially. What's arriving now is the Home Fleet, the Colonial Fleet, and the Deep Range Fleet. You wanted to see our capabilities. Congratulations." As if to punctuate her words, the largest vessel, easily 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that made Zephyrian technology look primitive, fired a single shot, not at the Zephyrian fleet, but at a nearby asteroid. The massive rock simply ceased to exist, converted to its component atoms. In an instant, Admiral Keth Moore stared at the tactical display, watching as human reinforcements continued to arrive. The numbers were becoming overwhelming, but more than that, the technology on display was impossible. These ships showed engineering principles that shouldn't exist, weapons that violated known physics. "How?" he managed to ask. Admiral Chen's voice came through clearly, and now Keth Moore could hear something in it he'd missed before. Sadness. "Did you really think we'd spend 8,000 years sitting on one world? Did you think we hadn't been watching, learning, preparing? Admiral, you've just awakened something that the galaxy spent millennia trying to keep sleeping. I hope it was worth it." High Counselor Vexthera stood before the council's emergency session, her ancient form trembling not with age, but with a fury that had been building for 8,000 years. Around her, the crystalline chamber buzzed with panicked voices as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. 17 Zephyrian worlds have gone dark, announced Intelligence Director Mordun, his forearms gesturing frantically at the holographic display. Not destroyed, Dark. Complete communications blackout. Our deep space monitoring stations report massive fleet movements in sectors we thought were empty. Admiral Keth Moore, second in command, Commander Veltash, stood at rigid attention as he delivered his report. The third fleet is gone, counselors. Admiral Keth Moore's final transmission indicated they were engaging a force of unprecedented size and technological capability. Then nothing. High Counselor Vexthera's 6 eyes focused on each council member in turn, and in that gaze they saw the weight of prophecy fulfilled. When she spoke, her voice carried no satisfaction, only the terrible weariness of one who had tried to prevent disaster and failed. You wanted to test them, she said, each word falling like a stone into still water. You wanted to show the humans their place. Well, now you know what that place is. Young Counselor Zilnef, her earlier bravado completely vanished, stepped forward with trembling limbs. Counselor, surely this is temporary. A show of force in response to our demonstration. They'll negotiate. They must negotiate. The chamber's center display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. As they watched, red indicators began appearing. Not the slow spread of normal fleet movements, but the sudden, coordinated emergence of forces that had been hidden for millennia. Human battle groups were materializing from what had appeared to be empty space, revealing a logistics network that spanned half the galaxy. By the Ancient Ones, whispered Trade Minister Quexanael. How many ships do they have? Director Mordun's voice cracked as he read from his intelligence reports. Current estimates suggest approximately 40,000 major combat vessels, with support fleets numbering in the hundreds of thousands. But counselors, that's not the worst part. He manipulated the display, zooming in on engagement reports from the frontier. These aren't just ships, they're mobile research stations, factory ships, shipyards. The humans haven't just been building a fleet. They've been building a civilization designed for war. High Counselor Vexthera moved to the chamber's center, her robe seeming to absorb the holographic light. 8,000 years ago, I watched the first human ship emerge from their home system. Do you know what it was? A cargo vessel. Not a warship, not an explorer, a trader. They came seeking commerce, knowledge, friendship. She gestured to the display, where the red indicators continued to multiply. The Korthak saw that as weakness. They destroyed the ship, killed its crew, and declared humans an insignificant species to be harvested for slave labor. They sent fleets to claim the human worlds. The younger counselors leaned forward despite themselves, caught by the power of her narrative. What happened next, Vexthera continued, was not war as we understand it. War has rules, limits, objectives. What the humans unleashed was something else entirely. They didn't just fight the Korthak. They studied them. Every defeat taught them something new. Every loss made them stronger. Commander Veltash interrupted, desperation clear in his voice. But they were primitive. Their technology was centuries behind ours. Was it? Vexthera's smile was sharp as a blade. Or did they simply choose to appear primitive? Tell me, Commander, in all our intelligence gathering about human space, how many of their worlds have we actually visited? The silence that followed was answer enough. They've been watching us for 8 millennia, she continued, learning our languages, studying our technology, understanding our weaknesses. While we saw them as confined to a few dozen systems, they were building shadow colonies in empty space, hollowing out asteroids, constructing habitats in places we never thought to look. The display updated again, showing new intelligence reports. Human fleets weren't just appearing from known space. They were emerging from the galactic void itself, from regions everyone knew were barren and lifeless. Director Mordun's hands shook as he read the latest updates. Counselors, we're receiving reports from across the Outer Rim. The Jaktar Confederacy's border worlds are reporting human fleets demanding immediate surrender. The The Valkyrie Union's deep space stations have gone silent. It's as if they've been planning this for thousands of years, Vextharov finished, because they have been. Every slight, every dismissal, every casual threat from species who thought themselves superior, they remembered it all. They've been preparing for this day since the moment we made them our enemy. Counselor Zilnev collapsed into her seat, the full scope of the situation finally penetrating her understanding. What do they want? What are their demands? A new voice cut through the chamber, clear, artificially transmitted, speaking perfect Zephyrian with an accent none of them recognized. Every being in the room felt their blood chill as they realized the humans had been listening to their emergency session. We want what you should have given us 8,000 years ago. The voice said, respect. The chamber security systems, among the most advanced in the galaxy, had been penetrated as if they didn't exist. Every council member suddenly understood that their most secure communications had been compromised for who knew how long. I am Fleet Admiral Elizabeth Rivera of the Human Deep Range Command. The voice continued. High Counselor Vextharov, your reputation for wisdom precedes you. We harbor no ill will toward those who counsel restraint. Vextharov stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Admiral Rivera, what are your intentions? Simple, Counselor. For 8 millennia, this galaxy has been divided into those who rule and those who serve. Species are classified as either worthy of respect or suitable for exploitation. The humans were classified as the latter. We're here to correct that error. The implications hit every council member simultaneously. This wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. This was a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. Admiral, Vextharov said carefully, surely there's room for negotiation. The action against your patrol group was the decision of one commander, not the will of the entire council. The pause that followed stretched for what felt like an eternity. Counselor Vextharov, 3 days ago, Admiral Kethmore fired on human vessels in human space. That act of war has been answered. But this isn't about vengeance. It's about making sure it never happens again. The galaxy is about to learn what humans do when someone makes a mistake of believing our patience is weakness. Throughout the chamber, advanced alien minds that had ruled star empires for millennia struggled to comprehend the scope of what they were facing. The humans hadn't just prepared for war. They had prepared to remake the galaxy itself. And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Kethmore's final transmission played on repeat in secure Zephyrian archives. They're not human. Whatever these things are, they're not the species we thought we knew. They're something else entirely. Something that learned from our mistakes and decided never to make them again. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was angry. The Zephyrian border fortress of Kethendu had stood unconquered for 3,000 years, its massive weapons platforms and quantum barriers, making it one of the most formidable defensive positions in the galaxy. Built into a massive asteroid field at the junction of 7 hyperspace routes, it controlled access to the Zephyrian heartland and had never fired its weapons in anger. Its reputation alone was enough to deter any potential aggressor. Fortress Commander Railvoss stood in the station's command center, watching her tactical displays with growing disbelief. The human fleet approaching her position didn't fit any known pattern of warfare. Instead of the massive dreadnought formation she expected, what she saw looked more like a migration. Commander, her tactical officer reported, the human fleet composition is unusual. I'm reading heavy cargo vessels, mobile shipyards, what appeared to be civilian transports, and... He paused, checking his readings. Colony ships. Railvoth frowned at the displays. Colony ships? In a military formation? Yes, Commander. Long-range sensors indicate they're carrying families, human civilians, including children. But they're also carrying enough firepower to level the system. The fortress had been built to withstand sieges lasting decades, its weapons designed to destroy entire fleets. But the human approach was something new. They weren't trying to storm the fortress or bypass it. They were settling in around it, establishing what looked like permanent installations in the surrounding asteroid field. Open a channel, Railvoth ordered. Let's see what they want. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human female who appeared to be middle-aged by their species standards. Unlike the military commanders Railvoth expected, this woman wore civilian clothing and had the weathered look of someone who spent time on planetary surfaces. "I am Commander Railvoth of Fortress Kethendu. Identify yourself and state your intentions." The human woman smiled, and there was something unsettling about its warmth. "I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez, Colonial Administrator for the new Terra Settlement Group. As for our intentions, we're here to establish a colony." Railvoth blinked in confusion. "A colony? This is a military fortification controlling a strategic hyperspace junction. There are no habitable worlds in this system." "There weren't," Dr. Martinez agreed. "But there will be. Commander, you're about to witness something that might seem impossible to your people. We're going to terraform this entire system while your fortress watches." Before Railvoth could respond, the human fleet began to move with purpose that defied understanding. The massive cargo vessels opened like flowers, revealing industrial complexes that began consuming asteroids and converting them into raw materials. Mobile shipyards started producing not warships, but construction vehicles and atmospheric processors. "This is madness," Railvoth's second-in-command whispered. "They're ignoring our weapons completely." It was true. The human fleet moved around the fortress as if it weren't there, neither threatening it nor avoiding it. They were simply treating it as part of the landscape, a large, irrelevant rock that happened to be in their way. "Commander," the tactical officer called out, "long-range sensors are detecting similar activity throughout the sector. Human fleets are establishing colonies on 47 worlds simultaneously. They're not conquering systems. They're moving into them." Dr. Martinez's voice came through the communication channel again, as if she were continuing a casual conversation. "Commander Railvoth, I should probably explain what you're seeing. For 8,000 years, your people and others have told us where we could and couldn't go, what worlds we could settle, which systems were off-limits. We accepted those restrictions because we believed in peaceful coexistence." On the tactical display, Railvoth watched in fascination as human atmospheric processors began working on a nearby dead world. Within hours, they were generating a breathable atmosphere. Within days, the planet's surface began showing signs of vegetation. "But here's the thing about humans," Dr. Martinez continued, her voice maintaining that unsettling warmth. "When someone tells us we can't do something, we start figuring out how to do it anyway. When someone says a world is uninhabitable, we develop technology to make it habitable. When someone says we don't belong somewhere, we make ourselves belong." Railvoth was beginning to understand the true scope of what she was witnessing. This was an invasion. It was colonization on a scale that defied comprehension. The humans weren't trying to destroy the existing galactic order. They were simply ignoring it and building their own. "The fortress is receiving targeting data," her tactical officer reported, tension clear in his voice. "From where?" "Everywhere, Commander. Every human vessel, every construction platform, every atmospheric processor. They all have weapon systems integrated into their designs. We're not facing a military fleet. We're facing an entire civilization that's been militarized." Dr. Martinez appeared on screen again, and this time her expression was more serious. "Commander, I need to be clear about something. That fortress of yours controls access to Zephyrian space, and it's armed with weapons capable of destroying planets. As long as it exists, it poses a threat to our colonies and our families." Railvoth felt her heart skip. "Are you threatening my station?" "No, Commander. I'm offering you a choice." The human woman gestured, and the display showed the growing human presence throughout the system. "You can remain in your fortress, maintaining your watch over empty space, while we build a new civilization around you. Your weapons can't stop what we're doing. There are too many of us spread across too many locations." The tactical display confirmed Dr. Martinez's words. The human presence had grown exponentially in just hours, with construction platforms and defensive installations spreading throughout the asteroid field. Even if the fortress opened fire, it could only target a fraction of the human assets. "Or," Dr. Martinez continued, "you can join us. We're building something new here, a place where species work together, instead of one ruling over others. Your people's military expertise will be valuable in defending what we're creating. Railvoth stared at the display, trying to process what she was seeing. The humans weren't offering conquest or surrender. They were offering partnership in something that transcended traditional concepts of empire and territory. "What about the Zephyrian Empire?" she asked. "What about the Council?" Dr. Martinez's smile returned, but now it carried an edge of steel. "Commander, 3 hours ago, human fleets simultaneously arrived at every major Zephyrian world, not to attack them, but to establish colonies in their systems. Your council is currently dealing with the same choice I'm offering you. The communication channel filled with new voices, reports from across Zephyrian space. Human fleets weren't destroying worlds. They were settling next to them, building new societies that made the old boundaries irrelevant. This is impossible," Railvoth whispered. "The logistics alone." "Commander, we've had 8,000 years to plan this. Every slight, every dismissal, every casual threat taught us something about how galactic civilization really works. We studied every species, mapped every system, identified every weakness, and then we built something better." On the tactical display, the first human terraformed world in the system showed cities rising from empty plains, starships launching from newly constructed spaceports. In a matter of days, the humans had created a thriving world where there had been only lifeless rock. Railvoth looked at her crew, seeing her own amazement reflected in their faces. They were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. Not the rise of a new empire, but the emergence of a new kind of civilization entirely. "Dr. Martinez," she said finally, "I'd like to discuss terms." 6 months after the first human fleets emerged from the void, High Counselor Vextera stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the impossible sight of humans and Zephyrians working side by side to construct a massive orbital habitat. The station itself was a marvel, part human engineering, part Zephyrian crystal growing technology, creating something neither species could have built alone. Around her, the galaxy had transformed in ways that defied every prediction. The great empires hadn't fallen. They had evolved, adapting to a new reality where strength was measured not by the ability to dominate, but by the capacity to contribute to something larger than themselves. "The integration is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections," reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human liaison who had become Vextera's closest collaborator in the new galactic government. "Former Zephyrian military commanders are proving exceptionally capable at organizing defensive networks for the outer colonies." Vextera's ancient eyes tracked the construction ships moving through space like a carefully choreographed dance. "They were always capable, Doctor. They simply needed a purpose worthy of their abilities. The transformation hadn't been without its challenges. Some species had resisted, clinging to old hierarchies and ancient prejudices. The Korthak remnants had attempted to rally opposition, painting the human expansion as a threat to galactic civilization. They had been systematically ignored, not defeated, but rendered irrelevant as world after world chose to join the new order. "Status report from the outer colonies?" Vextera asked. Dr. Vasquez consulted her holographic display, smiling at what she saw. "Colony Ship Group 7 has successfully established 43 new worlds in the Andromeda approach. The Velcari engineers managed to reduce terraforming time to 18 days per world. We're officially ahead of schedule." The numbers were staggering. In 6 months, humanity and its new partners had established more colonies than the old galactic empires had built in the previous 1,000 years. But more than the raw statistics, what amazed Vextera was the nature of these colonies. Integrated communities where different species contributed their unique strengths to shared goals. "High Counselor," Dr. Vasquez said, her tone becoming more serious. "We're receiving the final reports from the integration committees. Would you like to review them?" Vextera nodded, and the observation deck's main display activated, showing the current state of galactic civilization. The old empire boundaries have become largely meaningless, replaced by a network of cooperative colonies and shared resources that span multiple galaxies. "The Zephyrian Empire has formally dissolved," Dr. Vasquez reported, with 87% of former Imperial worlds voting to join the Galactic Cooperative. "The Zephyrian Council has been reconstituted as an advisory body within the new government structure, and the resistance movements, Minimal and declining, the Purist Coalition controls 7 systems in the Outer Rim, but they're economically isolated and losing population as their citizens emigrate to cooperative worlds. Admiral Keth Moore's nephew leads the Zephyrian Restoration Front, but intelligence indicates they're down to 3 ships and approximately 200 followers. Vexthera allowed herself a small smile. The old order hadn't been destroyed. It had simply been made obsolete. When offered a choice between the grinding hierarchies of empire and the promise of genuine cooperation, most beings chose the future over the past. "There is one matter that requires your attention," Dr. Vasquez continued, her expression becoming carefully neutral. "We've received a communication from Admiral Keth Moore." The name sent a chill through the observation deck. The Zephyrian admiral who had started this transformation by attacking the human patrol group had been presumed dead, his fleet lost in the first human response. Learning he was alive raised troubling questions. Where is he? In human custody, aboard the hospital ship Mercy's Grace. He's been there for 6 months, recovering from injuries sustained when his flagship was disabled. He's requesting to speak with you personally. Vexthera was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Keth Moore represented everything wrong with the old system: the arrogance, the casual cruelty, the assumption that might made right. But he was also, in his way, responsible for humanity's emergence. His actions had catalyzed changes that might have taken centuries to occur naturally. "Arrange the meeting," she said finally. 3 hours later, Vexthera found herself in the medical bay of the Mercy's Grace, a human hospital ship that had been treating wounded from all species throughout the transition. The irony wasn't lost on her. Beings who had been enemies 6 months ago now received medical care from the very people they had tried to destroy. Admiral Keth Moore looked smaller than she remembered, his proud bearing diminished by months of recovery and what appeared to be profound soul-searching. When he saw her, he attempted to rise from his bed, but Vexthera gestured for him to remain seated. "High Counselor," he said, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. "Thank you for coming." "Admiral, you wanted to speak with